Kia ora koutou. Oh, you want to come up here? Should we just you have that? You have the podium. You're the important one. Kia ora koutou. So, yeah, we've been sitting at the back all day listening to all of the really awesome presentations. And I guess now our job is to whakakapi this day and I guess provide a bit of a summary of what we've observed, some of the key themes and key kaupapa throughout the day, and maybe provide some next steps for people attending who might want to take this a bit further, no matter what, I guess, element or aspect of this hui you have been most engaged or inspired by. Ko waiau, he iri tēnei no Ngāti Awa me Waikato tainui hoki, ko Tamatha pō tōku ingoa.
Kia ora koutou, he mihi mahana kia koutou, ki ngā tangata whenua o tēnei wā, tēnā koutou, me ngā iwi o ngā hoi whā, tēnā koutou. Ko Jane Kelsey ahau, and this is the time for the young leadership.
Yep. So what we're going to do is we are going to provide a bit of an overview. So we're going to start with our kind of key presentations for the day from Laura and Efeso. We're going to just summarise those a little bit, and then we're going to do a bit of a detailed summary of all the different sessions. There were a lot, there were 33, so you're going to have to bear with us. And then we will look at, I guess, some overarching key themes and, next steps. So do you want to give a bit of a summary of the first two sessions?
I'll be brave. Gosh, you're tall. It was a great start to the day to have two big picture challenges from Laura and Efeso. And I'm sure they'll forgive me if I've taken a very high-level overview of, and everyone will have taken something themselves out from this. But one of the things that for me was very important in what Laura was saying was the importance for us to ensure that everyone can flourish. That if we have a vision for Aotearoa, it is a vision in which everyone can flourish. But in particular, to recognise that the pressure is on the young generation. They are the ones who are going to have to live with what is here. They are the ones who are going to have to be empowered to take positions and to see themselves in the position of decision making, not having the decisions made for them. But in Aotearoa, that has to be done within the realities of Te Tiriti o Waitangi and the kaupapa that is fundamental to us, which is a kaupapa led by Māori, but in which Pacific values and principles and aspirations coincide and coexist. And so do those of so many who have expressed their views today. But that those have to take precedence over Pākehā fear, in particular of losing power and of change. And the strategies for achieving that through the collective impact model of a common agenda, of shared measurements, of mutually reinforcing activities, of continuous communication, and having a backbone support organisation is something that is already underway. And the invitation from Laura was for us to think of how we integrate ourselves into that process, with a focus on transformation, not on resting our hopes in the politicians at the next election. Then Efeso gave us a different lens through which to see some of these challenges about how do we put the counter-narrative? How do we rethink the conversation and how we manage the conversations we have to have in a process of transformation? And he had this lovely analogy of in the Pacific context of what is the water that we come from? What is the vision that we have for ourselves? What is it that gives us power of being, of place? What unites us? How do we nurture and mentor the next generation and create spaces for them within that vision of the world? And his contribution to our thinking about that was the Talanoa methodologies of starting not with preconceived outcomes, but starting with a space in which conversations can take place that respect everybody's ability to tell their own stories, where everyone is at the same level, where there is aroha towards those who participate even when you disagree with them, and acknowledging the contribution that people want to make. How to create a warmth and a rhythm to that conversation and have respect where there is disagreement that can still be underpinned by the values and the visions and the goals of making a new kind of world. And in particular, how that is done within a Pacific context in which we are all a part. So he also asked, who is making the decisions now, rather than that process? Who is invited to the conversation? And who is excluded? Who is not on the same level? And if we're going to look at being pacifically together, what has to change and how do we change this? And when I was listening to this, I was thinking of Matua Moana, who I know is listening, can't be here today, sends his apologies, but is listening, that if this is to be a treaty-based vision for Aotearoa, it's not a matter of Māori asking for permission. What is intrinsic to mana motuhake, to tino rangatiratanga, to mana whenua, is the power and the right and the authority to do it without permission. That's what we saw with the roadblocks. That's what we saw with so many of the initiatives around COVID. And so I think one of the questions I had for you, Laura, was in your collective impact model, where does Te Tiriti and Tino Rangatiratanga fit in those relationships? Yeah? And drawing on Efeso's model, how does the Talanoa methodology relate to that collective impact model? And I think that's something it's useful for us to think a bit more about. And just to conclude my comments on that, when I was thinking about these challenges, Margaret Mutu from Ngāti Kahu and I did a thing a few weeks ago with the Human Rights Commission executive. And we were asked to talk about what would a Human Rights Commission look like if Te Tiriti had been honoured. Yeah? Really interesting questions about, what is... You start with values. You start with values and principles. Values of whanaungatanga, manaakitanga, kotahitanga, aroha, kaitiakitanga, the relationships that then come out from that means different ways of thinking about power, different ways of having conversations. How does rangatiratanga and kawanatanga relate in terms of those who exercise that level of power, but also how does tangata whenua, mana whenua and manuhiri relate to each other? What does that mean for rights within a treaty-based Aotearoa? Yeah? Economic rights, social rights, rights to housing, rights to livelihood, protection of te ao, Māori, te ao. And then the structures come, and that's when we started to talk about what people have talked about here in terms of matike mai and constitutions. But you don't start with the structures, you start with the values and the relationships and the understandings. And then from that come the structures, and then come, okay, we now have this elephant in Wellington and other places. We have a state that does not reflect that. So how do you change that? And if it is not changing, how do you get around the barriers that it poses? And so let me now pass over to those who have the answers.
Oh, no. And I just wanted to, just something that I thought about with the two keynote speakers this morning is that I felt like there was a really interesting contrast there with Efeso talking about the Pacific, and actually a lot of people today talked about how the Pacific Ocean is this connecting factor, and we talked about Talanoa, but it's interesting with Laura's mahi as well, because I see you utilising the internet in the same way that the ocean was utilised as a connector and a thing that draws us together. So I think there's a whole conversation there that we need to have as a generation about how we utilise the internet, how we decolonise it, and how we can use it as that connecting factor that draws us together in order to have that talanoa that Efeso was talking about. So, yeah, so I think I might go through a bit of probably won't go through a step-by-step on every presentation that we had, unless that's what... No, all right. All right, I wasn't sure how long you wanted to keep going for. So actually, yeah. Okay, so maybe we should move on to actions. Move on to actions, yeah, because we've drafted up 4 different actions that would be we think people would be able to take away from here as a way to expand on, keep learning, and engage in all of the different things that were talked about today. So. Obviously, Mātike Mai was a consistent theme throughout the day, and the need for constitutional transformation, and I think that's a good starting place, and most people in this room have probably read it already, but that's always a good starting place, is reading that and understanding or being able to imagine what a te tiriti-based future might look like. And so that's kind of the first point, and having a discussion with your whānau, your friends, your communities about what that means and how we make that a reality in the mahi that we do, because the way that I see it is all of us make decisions every single day, and we can inform those by being able to see what it is that we want to achieve through every decision that we make, whether you're a normal person, whether you're a person within a position of power. Having that understanding is really key, I think, and encouraging those around you to invest in themselves through understanding, I guess, the foundational document of Aotearoa is really important, and he whakaputanga as well. A second thing that we thought would be really helpful that each and every one of us can go away and do is go and have a kai and kōrero. Now, this is a concept that is quite popular across different platforms. I know Just Speak, the Criminal Justice Transformation Organisation, talks a lot about kai and kōrero and the transformational power and potential of conversations. And so, given the people that are in this room, we all come from different types of communities, so and there's nothing that gets people together and talking like kai. So having those conversations, those courageous conversations, I think that's been a real key theme for the last 12 months actually, is we're all realising how much we need to have those conversations. I know particularly within the Māori communities, within my communities, we're having a lot of conversations about anti-blackness in our communities and how we carry that and how we dismantle that as tangata whenua. So that's another one, is family or community potlucks, just at your house or at somebody's house, I think can be really transformational. Yeah, and you know, Efeso presented us with a model in which we can do that with the Talanoa model. It shows us a way that we can talk with one another and challenge one another coming from a space of aroha, I think is really important. And we've all got racist whānau members or climate denier whānau members that we can challenge in a loving way. And within ourselves, absolutely. Absolutely, yep. And some great resources and books out there that you can have a read of. Me and White Supremacy is a great one. Mātike Mai is another. There's heaps of good resources out there. So that's another one. As kai and kōrero, I think conversations are super important and very underrated. The third one that action that we thought everyone could take, if you're in a position to do it, is to resource a transformational initiative in whatever capacity you have. So if you have some money and you can give small and regular donations to organisations, I think that's super important. Being involved with different NGOs, it's really hard to find funding from an ethical standpoint. You know, a lot of the main funders have their own ethical barriers, whether it's I guess, trusts or funds that invest in the fossil fuel industry, or whether it's funds that get money from gambling or from other people's misery. So I think that's a really important and easy way that you can help if you are able to do that, is financially give some money, even if it's like $3 a week, you know, the price of a coffee. That can be really transformational. And if not money, then with your time. Mahi aroha, we talked about that today. So I think that's another really good way. And I know when I was on the Student Association last year, we had so many people around us who gave us their expertise, whether it was a legal opinion or something like that, which was always super helpful. So if you can give, I think that's another really tangible action that we can all take to realising this future that we've talked about very extensively today. And then the last action that we've come up with is taking at least one action to connect your space of activism to another space of activism to achieve real transformation. So that's talking about that whakawhanaungatanga and you know, today I feel like we talked a lot about silos and how a lot of our organisations or kaupapa exist within silos, but actually we need to reach beyond those to have any meaningful impact. So I think, yeah, connecting with other spaces, figuring out how we can support one another, and Laura talked about this awesome coalition that is about to be a big, awesome thing. So I think keeping an eye out for that and getting involved is another really awesome action. So the 4 actions. The first is reading Mā Tike Mai. Second is a family or community potluck, even if you just have one this year. The third is resourcing a transformational initiative. And the fourth is taking at least one action to connect up the different spaces within your activism.
Just 1 minute, Jane. I'm so sorry. I have to go and catch a plane. I'm so sorry to interrupt you, because I would have loved to hear the rest of that. But I just didn't want to sneak out without saying, e nohora. It's been fabulous to share the day with you all, and thank you so much for your great attention to the kaupapa and to all our fantastic speakers. What a great pleasure to hear you all. And until next time, yeah? Kia ora. Kia ora. Thank you. And to my co-chair, just in case nobody thanks her, yeah, we're a good tag team. Kia ora, everybody.
All I was going to do was explain what happens next with the record of things. We're going to write up 4-page summary for the politicians, which will go to them sometime later, hopefully at end of the week. And then the action stuff won't be in the report that goes to them, but we'll do a couple of pages that capture the key action points that people have talked about. In addition, I think, John, on the website there is not only the full streaming of this, but there was a transcript that was going to be done on a running basis, and that can get tidied up so that there will be something people can read and not just have to go to the point in the visual record or audio record. And so this needs to have a life after today. Right? And the intention is that it's a resource with all these magnificent presentations from people that can be used and reused in whether you're doing it for teaching or for a whānau potluck or as a conversation starter. So view this as the starting point for that conversation. Have I got that right, John?
Yes. Aye.
All right,